You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as the lead guitarist and backing vocalist for the 3-time Juno-nominated band Hollerado. So welcome to the podcast, Nixon Boyd. Nixon, how are you, and how much has your life changed over the last few months since becoming a proud papa?
Hey, Joel. Great to be here, man, first of all. And what a question to start with. It's been an absolute blast, along with the arrival of our kid, our little boy. My wife and I were both in the arts. On one hand, we make our own schedules, which makes, parenting in theory easier. But on the second hand, we're constantly juggling a lot of projects. So we're learning how to cover for each other, how to ask for help, how to make the most of our quality time together, how to make it all work.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how sleep deprived are you?
You know what? I'm not bad right now. I'm maybe at a 6 or a 6.5. I think we got really lucky. We got a good sleeper in the house.
That's like the number one quality you could ask for.
It's a huge quality. Kid. Yeah, it's made it really easy to like the little guy. During the first few weeks, that wasn't the story, but he found his groove really fast. So that has helped make things work a lot as well.
And for someone like me that doesn't have any kids, can you put into words how much it changes you as a person? My understanding is we're all a little selfish. It's just, we can be nice people, we can be giving, but there's this underlying selfishness of like, this is my life, this is my adventure, I'm number one. And it's only once you've had a kid where it's the first time where you're not number one. It's the first time that you'll actually put yourself behind someone else that will not survive without you stepping up. Is there any truth to that?
Definitely. I think we all like to think of ourselves as, nice people, generous people. But I think you don't realize, just how generous or how maybe ungenerous you are with your time until there's, somebody out there that, truly needs you for their survival, for their upbringing, for their development. I have definitely had to reckon with the realization that I've taken a path here, as an artist where you do need a lot of time. You need a lot of time to, figure out your ideas. Let's say if you're songwriting, work in the studio takes a long time, to get a song right. Traveling takes a long time. It didn't totally occur to me how much time I demanded for myself until we had our little boy. But now that I think I have been able to make those realizations, the way forward, and the only thing that makes sense to me is to really value the time that you do have for yourself and not squander it. You get a 6-hour stretch to work and you spend 0% of it, checking your email or scrolling Facebook, because it's time to work. And then, by the same token, when you are devoting time to a little kid, that is time where you're also 100% on and you're 100% there for them. So it's when you have less time, I guess for me, when I have less time to go around, the time that you spend is less watered down. It's like it's highly concentrated time doing whatever it's time to do.
So last question about kids, and then we'll dive into your music career here. But how amazing is it that your brother Jake, who's was also a member of Hollerado and who I've had as a guest on this podcast, he also had his first kid not too long ago. So how amazing is it that you both kind of experience this together?
It's super wicked, and it's weirdly just a continuation of how our lives in relation to one another have been, since from growing up together to starting a band together to touring together, and now experience this stage of our lives together. Weirdly feels normal.
That's awesome. Now, uh, I like to start off the interviews by sharing with our listeners how the guests and I know each other, just showing the importance of networking, of building community, of fostering relationships. So, in our case, you grew up in Manotick and I grew up in Russell, just a few
Yeah.
towns over. And, we're probably around the same age. So we grew up in the same Ottawa music scene in the mid to late 2000s. And I remember your band had this buzz going on, and my drummer Anto would always talk about Hollerado, and they're doing this and they're doing that. So, I remember you guys going all the way back to the beginning, and I actually ended up moving to the GTA, and with your success, you guys had a lot of stuff going on in the GTA. So I saw you guys in Halton Hills. You were headlining a festival. This was in 2014, I believe. And
Yep.
then I was actually in your Desire music video at the Horseshoe. I was there for the filming, and you guys did a concert there. And then if we fast forward to just a few months ago, your brother was the special guest at an open mic in Ottawa that I attend, and
Right.
you came out and we reconnected there. So that's kind of the lineage of how we ended up where we are here today.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of a small world, the art scene in Canada, especially the music scene in Canada. If you spend any time at all going to shows or making music, I feel like in any capacity, the longer you do it, the more likely it is that you're going to kind of meet just everybody who else who does it.
So I wanted to kick off this episode powerfully. So I reached out to somebody to help me out, and I have some kind words sent in from Darren Pfeiffer, the
No way.
incredible drummer for Goldfinger, for Sum 41, for the Salads, radio personality. This guy's amazing. And this is what he said. He said, Nixon is a great human being, an incredible musician, and a friend. I'm so happy for his continued success. So that's from Darren Pfeiffer.
That's so sweet. I love Darren. He helped sort of guide us early on in our careers and encouraged us a lot. Took an interest in what we were making. Offered like really helpful thoughts when we were extremely green with regards to the music industry. And yeah, was just an all around great guy and definitely a friend. So that is, yeah, really touching to hear.
And it's not only that he has all this experience as a musician, having found success in the music industry, but he ran a record label, management. He was a radio personality at the Edge. So it's like this guy has been there and done it, and he can help
Totally.
guide you moving forward.
Totally. Yep. He was a total beacon for us early on, and we remained friends ever since, and we connect every so often whenever the opportunity arises. That's quite a surprise to like hear a little snippet from him.
There we go. So we're gonna do the full 2 hour deep dive. We're gonna cover your life, your career, your discography, but we're gonna get started all the way back at the beginning. So where does this love of music come from, and is there an earliest musical memory that comes to you now?
I think like with most people, it comes from being exposed to music just while I was growing up in my house. Um, More so just in terms of records that were played. Both my parents loved, and still love, 60s rock and roll. And as as time progressed, they would often get into sort of the latest like cool thing, through the 80s when I was born and on into the 90s. I feel like they, were introducing me to things, at, 7 years old. My dad was a huge Nirvana fan and has remained one ever since. And he's always been a huge Frank Zappa fan, Rolling Stones, going back to the 60s Beatles. Um, so there a seed was definitely planted there. But maybe one of the real drivers of my interest in making music, and not just appreciating it, was my grandfather, who showed me his music, and which I also fell in love with. He was a huge fan of Johnny Cash, and other country music from that era, but also big band music, Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw, Bix Beiderbecke, um, and going even further back, like marching band music, which I loved. And I think he caught on to the fact that I was pretty intrigued in this stuff. And so for a certain stretch of my childhood, a visit to his place would mean making mixtapes, where he would fire up his turntable, and we would choose a song to record to a tape so that I could take it and we could play it in like my parents' car on my drive home, or for the next few weeks until I saw him again. And interspersed with each song, he had a little microphone set up. So he would do like a little DJ act and would do actually little interviews with me, asking me what I liked about the song we just recorded to the tape. And I would answer, and often it would be, for the marching music, I'd be, marching around his living room. For the Johnny Cash stuff, I would be, trying to figure out the words, and so on and so forth, to sort of, gain an understanding of what it meant to like talk about music and appreciate it and get your hands dirty with it a little bit.
Did your grandpa have a DJ name while he was making these mixtapes?
No, you know
DJ
what?
Gramps?
I wish. Yeah, you know what? Maybe he's still going. He's 93 years old, and I think next time I see him, I have to tell him I realized, hey, I just realized what your DJ name should be. I'm not sure what I'm going to tell him yet, but I think that's a nice topic of conversation for the next time I go.
Can we take a moment to acknowledge your dad and your grandpa's exquisite taste in music? I mean, all those artists you named are pretty amazing. You could have been brought up on terrible music, but no. The
Yeah,
the
well,
rock and roll god smiled in your favor with your parents and your grandparents.
I think that stuff is great, and I think, yeah, I also think it gave me an appreciation for, some essential quality that all good stuff has. Hopefully a quality that transcends genre, that has more to do with expression. A song's ability to express something successfully, as opposed to a certain tone being either cool or not cool. Because big band stuff is like, unrelentingly just like joyful for the most part. Whereas, the Rolling Stones are sort of sour and sardonic, vastly different tones, but still equally successful in expressing what they set out to express.
So your dad, your grandpa, your mom, they got you into listening to music and appreciating music and loving music.
Mhm.
How do you transition from just someone that enjoys music to actually picking up an instrument? I assume guitar is your first instrument, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, no, actually. So this is where my paternal grandfather comes in. The DJ granddad was on my mom's side. My dad's dad was a violin player, and he gave me a violin when I was, I think, 5. So that was my first instrument, and I played it for 7 years. I did the classical regimented sort of learning approach to violin, learned how to read music, learned music theory. Got to the point where I could play in the house as a little kid and nobody was running for cover because of how terrible it sounded. Um, and did like little competitions and stuff, sort of as, just part of when you're, uh, you know, if when you have a certain teacher and they think you're good, they sign you up for these things and you go and play in churches alongside tons of other kids, and you sort of gain a confidence playing on stage and in front of people, that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And then of course when I turned 12, or I guess 12 or 13, um, I, to my great discredit, thought the violin wasn't cool and wanted to play guitar instead. So I switched to guitar, and unfortunately don't pick up the violin very much anymore. But you know, I have to credit, yeah, that my other granddad for getting me into the violin as a player himself, and for maybe you know encouraging my parents to like sign me up for lessons by giving us an instrument I could use.
So guitar kicks in around 12 years old. Is it later on that the singing, that the songwriting comes in?
It's actually kind of right away. It's always been interwoven with my interest in the guitar. Um, it's really fun to learn to play solos, copying blues records, as a teenager, is one of the most exciting feelings I can remember ever having. And like, bending notes and doing things like Eric Clapton, on his Cream records, or, Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan. You feel like an absolute god when you first learn to copy other guys' solos, and that's really fun. But yeah, sort of going back to the goal of a song. I've always had this urge to like use the guitar as one piece of the puzzle, in tandem, with lyrics, with written words, to like put together an entire picture, put together a whole message, and that took place pretty much right away. I was writing little songs and recording them. Obviously, I knew how to use a tape deck. I'd been doing it for years with my granddad. So I would record little songs on like a Fisher Price tape deck, little microphone, to just get little song ideas down onto tape pretty much right away. And they they were rudimentary and like extremely dramatic. you know uh you know like stories of like, you know I don't know, superheroes doing stuff that I was into, or like little songs about the family dog, um or like Christmas songs that I thought were super clever, doing like a blues version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer that I thought it was so clever. But still, that gives you practice, and it sort of doesn't matter what you're writing about, even at any given time, even to this day. Um, my feeling is that as long as you're doing it, something you really like is going to come along at some point.
Do you think the experience with your grandpa using the tape recorder, do you think that planted the seed for eventually becoming an audio engineer and a producer? Like that, do you think that's like the starting of that thread that led to where your focus is now?
I think so, definitely. I looked up to him so much that I feel like maybe interwoven in my enjoyment of being a producer has to do with how much I got as a little kid out of him, curating these mixtapes for me and with me, and just the level of excitement that goes along with the discovery of new music, and the sort of capturing it in a way. Even though we weren't making our own songs, we were making our own mixtapes. We were making our own playlists, and uh, that's not too different, from recording your own song. Every song comes with its own influences, and you're just trying to capture um your own blend of those influences as an artist. And there's something similar to that um in making a playlist, in yeah, literally peppering your own influences just as a full sequence, as opposed to like sort of meshing them in and hiding them into a single song. And I think there's an absolute kinship there, and um, I think that experience has stuck with me and given me a lot of enjoyment out of what I do now.
And in which ways do you think that growing up in Manotick shaped you as a person and eventually as a musician? So my experience, growing up in Russell back then, it was population maybe 3,000, and now it's 30,000. It's really grown, but I feel like the small towns, there's a certain quality there that shapes who you are as a person.
I think so, definitely. First of all, there's not a lot to do, so you have to make up your own fun. Also, growing up in the suburbs usually means you have a little more space. Kids have a garage or a basement where they can get together and not bother their parents too much with the noise that they're making. Uh, there was also like a pretty accessible little punk scene, which I think is common for a lot of suburbs across North America. Uh, you know, Accessible because it just takes place in the community center, and it's not hidden from view. It's happening in a way that's obvious to everyone. And also they need acts. So if you have a little band in a little suburban town, and there's a punk show happening a month from now, your chances of actually playing exist. It's a small time situation, and kids are going to go one way or the other. But a small town promoter needs bands, and if you have a little band and you're 14, you actually have a chance to get on stage and play. And those were the first, I would say, like real shows that I did, playing those little punk shows in Manitoba.
And did you play in a few different bands before what would eventually become Hollerado? And if so, do you remember any of the band names? Our listeners love hearing these ridiculous early band names.
Oh man, for sure. Yeah, punk. I was in two or three little punk bands through like middle school, so grades 6, 7, 8, and then high school, grades 9 to 12, and then for the first couple of years in university college before we started Hollerado. I don't remember all the names. I remember one was called None of the Above, and we won a battle of the bands because everybody voted on the bands, and our name was at the bottom, and everybody voted for None of the Above for which bands should win.
That's
uh,
genius.
Having no memory whatsoever of the fact that that was our band name. But hey, else you take the wins that you can get as a musician, and we took that one.
That was an important one to add to your
Yeah,
bio at the
yeah, my
start.
resume.
Yeah, without that Battle of the Bands win, there'd be no Hollerado, there'd be no six. I'm just joking, but uh,
That's
I
funny.
I when I was promoting this episode that you were coming up in the next few weeks as a guest, I put out the bat signal to the Hollerado fans to send in fan questions. And I got a ton of questions. So I'm going to sprinkle them throughout the next 2 hours. And I got the first one here. So this is from Michael Wynn. And his question is, where does the first name Nixon come from? Do you have any history behind
Oh,
that?
that's funny. I know Mike. I know Michael Wynn. He's basically my cousin. So it's funny that he would want to ask that question. I
It's funny
guess,
he's never asked you that personally.
yeah,
He
he could
just
have
sends
asked
it
me.
into a podcast.
He was at a show at Royal Mountain Records the other day that I was at, and he literally could have asked me. Um, it's a family name, so it's my mom's grandmother's maiden name. And But I like to tell people that my friends are just hardcore Republicans.
There you go.
Yeah.
Uh, as a kid, if I were to ask you what you want to be when you grew up, what would you have answered? So let's say, at some point you figured out that you wanted to be a professional musician, but before that, was there anything you wanted to be as a kid when you grew up?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I wanted to be a pilot forever, and for as long as I can remember. That was the earliest thing I ever wanted to be, because my dad was a pilot, and I grew up on Air Force bases, so would see planes flying over, really cool planes flying overhead every 20 minutes, and that makes a huge impression on a little boy.
Okay. I've heard that you can't be a pilot if you're colorblind. Do you know if that's true? Have you heard that?
I don't know if that's true. I never looked into it hard enough. As I sort of made my way up, in through high school, and college, I sort of lost the desire to be a pilot. Thought I maybe wanted to be like an aeronautical engineer. So I went to school for engineering, and never looked into the pilot thing after, like, age 10 or something, age 13.
Yeah, I don't even know where I heard that, but I heard that. So I don't know if it's as a pilot, there's certain things if you're colorblind, you wouldn't be able to see that could be potentially fatal. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, there are definitely a lot of things. I heard, oh, you can't smoke weed and be a pilot. And I don't smoke a lot of weed anymore. But there was a time where that would have been, an absolute reason not to become a pilot.
That's a deal breaker right there.
Age 18, let's say age 18, me would be like, screw that. Weed's more important than having a cool job.
So if I knew you at 12 and you invited me over from Russell over to Manotick, uh, who would I be hanging out with? What was Nixon Boyd like at 12?
You'd probably be hanging out with me and Jake, maybe a few friends. Maybe we'd be try skateboarding. Uh, we might play a little music. We might jam in the basement or the garage. We might, yeah, we might just be hanging out, like kids do in the suburbs, just walking around doing nothing, going to get candy at the 7-Eleven.
Those were the
Pretty,
best days.
yeah, those are fun days. It's just anything to pass the time for sure.
So if we remain friends from 12 years old to 16 years old, and at 16, you invited me over, you were excited, you wanted to show me some new albums, what music would you be playing for me at 16?
Cool. I'd probably be playing maybe a NoFX album, other punk albums. I think I was 16 when NoFX put out this punk opera called The Decline, which is this amazing political statement running through an 18-minute song. It's funny because Green Day gets all this credit for coming out with the first sort of political concept album in American Idiot. And there was a rock opera element to that, in Jesus of Suburbia, but No Effects did it easily 5 years before. I mean, they were a political band from the get go, whereas Green Day was not. So I was really into that band at that time, and other political punk rock, Bad Religion, Anti-Flag, Strike Anywhere, all was really compelling to me at that time, and still is. To some degree, I still feel like, um, that music, it has remained pretty current.
So with me hosting this podcast, I check the music podcast charts frequently just to see who's doing well, what I can learn from them, where this podcast fits in. And Fat Mike from NoFX has a top 10 music podcast in Canada called Fat Mike's Fat Mike, which is pretty cool. So
That's
if
so
if
cool.
you weren't aware, maybe that's one where you would
I
enjoy.
actually, yeah, I actually just became aware of that podcast, and I do have to check it out. I think he's one of my all-time heroes. And yeah, I haven't listened, but I can imagine it would be pretty much nothing off the table kind of conversation.
Do you remember the first concert that you attended? And did you ever end up seeing No Effects?
I saw no effects, but not, it wasn't my first concert. The first concert I went to was with Jake and Menno, and it was Green Day and the Foo Fighters at, Edge Fest 98 or 99 in Ottawa.
What a double bill.
Dude, it was amazing. It was the Color and the Shape era Foo Fighters and Nimrod era Green Day. And to me, I mean, Green Day has done some great stuff. To me, the Foo Fighters haven't topped that record ever. And I was a huge fan. Actually, the first record I bought was The Color and the Shape, followed very closely by Nimrod. And then they both crazily came to Ottawa of all places on this tour, and yeah, that has stuck with me for a long time. I wound up crowd surfing and got on Much Music and was so proud of of my ability to be as cool as I thought I was doing doing the crowd surfing thing, which I don't think I've done since once.
Yeah, that's awesome. You did it once, you ended up on TV. You can't top that, so you
Yeah,
just
it's
stop
like
doing it. It's all
I'm
downhill.
good. I'm good. Mosh pits are fun and everything, but I love to watch and kind of think about the music as opposed to just freak out over music. But I got a good crowd surfing in that first time. That was amazing.
So I saw the Foo Fighters in Ottawa just a year after you. So I saw them in 2000. Our Lady Peace put together a massive festival called the Somersault Festival.
Right.
So in 2000, they came to Ottawa. So it was the Rideau Carleton Raceway, like the outside, they
Well,
put out a
yeah.
big stage. And this festival aged like a fine wine. When I look back at the poster, Our Lady Peace, Foo Fighters, A Perfect Circle, Finger
Whoa.
11, Catherine Wheel, Smashing Pumpkins.
Whoa.
Sum 41 had just put out their first album, so they were
Wow.
the very opener. Sum 41, Treble Charger, like it was the craziest festival. So
Good for Our Lady Peace. It's amazing.
yeah,
Uh,
when I had their drummer Jeremy Taggart on the podcast, and I asked him, like, I put up a picture of the poster, being like, "Man, you guys put together such a great lineup for this festival." He said we literally picked our favorite bands and asked if they wanted to tour with us. So that's why it ended up as such a good lineup.
That's incredible. And they were one of the biggest bands in the world at the time. So they could pull those names in and yeah, had pretty good taste. That's crazy. The Smashing Pumpkins now sort of mixed in on a bill like that is insane.
Yeah, I just saw them in Ottawa maybe 2 weeks ago. They were here at the arena playing, and it was great. When did you start jamming with your brother? So you both had the music in the family. You both pick up your own instruments. Doesn't necessarily mean you're actually playing together. Do you remember at what point you started jamming together?
Yeah, it wasn't right away. It's funny. We both played drums and guitar and could have at any time started playing music together. But it's weird when you're 2 years apart and you're, say, 12 and 14 or 14 and 16. You are under this weird illusion that you don't share that much in common, that you're extremely, that you that your age is way more of a factor than it really is. So he had his own like little bands with his friends, and I had my own little bands with my friends, and we didn't really mix until we were like, you know, like 17, 19. Um, Almost like I almost had to basically move away from home and start college for it to be cool to then come back and us want to play together. The desire just wasn't there up until that point. And then I think it seemed special and it seemed compelling as like a cool idea. Oh, we're back, under the same roof. We should jam a little bit. And um that was basically that didn't let up after that point because Hollerado started within the next year and a half, basically.
So we have a fan question from Drew Rogers, and his question is best and worst part of being in a band with your little brother.
Drew Rogers is one of my oldest friends. You said these people were fans, but it turns out they're just my closest friends and family.
Well,
Uh,
they can be friends and family and love the band.
I
So
guess they can be both. Drew Rogers, what best and worst part of being in a band
with your brother.
with your little brother? Um, maybe I feel like it's almost both good and bad. Like everything about it is both good and bad. It's cool that you can come home from for the holidays together and you have all these stories to tell about being on tour, but it's also bad because there's another person there in the house that knows all your tour stories when you're sitting down to dinner with your parents, and you may not want that. Sometimes it's fun, but it's a double-edged sword for sure. um, and there's like classic band dynamic stuff. 99% of the time you get along great, but that 1% of the time where you don't, it's like it's apocalyptic, and it's like a family argument on top of being a bandmate argument, which when those you compound those two things, I can't picture um, you know, a more terrible scene, a more intense fight. So it's either great, like I said, 99% of the time, but when it blows up, it really goes.
So I recently had Seamus from the Sheepdogs on the podcast, and his brother Ewan is also in the Sheepdogs. So I asked him the question, and he said the best part is they have this like just understanding of music together, where one guy's thinking something and the other guy knows what he's talking about, and they just have this synergy that works. And he also said the great thing is by having a brother in the band when you're touring, it's like, someone always has your back. And, I joke that like if ever a fight breaks out, at least one guy has your back. And he's like, yeah, that's actually happened before on tour. And he said the worst part is his brother is the older brother. He said, my brother would pull the big brother card frequently. He would
Right,
take he would take the what's the word? He would take ownership of situations because,
right.
the lifelong big brother. So did you ever play the big brother card?
I don't think I ever did. I think we fell into, for better or worse, a pretty democratic slash, you know, um, you know, anarchic, I want to say, situation politically in the band where everybody's voice had the same weight. And I feel like the band dynamic for us took precedence over the family dynamic. Everywhere we went, we were there kind of first as bandmates and second as brothers. But by the same token, the two are really closely linked. There's a sibling element to what you do as band members. You go through a lot together, and most of the time you're there for each other, but as with any family, sometimes you misstep and you hurt somebody's feelings, or you don't quite be the sibling that person needs at the time. As it's the same thing when it comes to bands, and so yeah, I guess, like, the sibling element is there for all the band members, kind of first and foremost. And yeah, I felt, I don't know, it's weird, but the sibling element melted away a little bit, I think, in the context of a band, because we were all just kind of equals, it felt like.
Can you rapid fire through some of the jobs that you had leading up to becoming a professional musician where Hollerado takes off and that's the full-time focus? Our listeners just love to hear that these guests, these rock stars are real people like us that had some crappy jobs along the way.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, I was a roofer. I was a gardener, like a landscaper. For a while, I cleaned out dead people's houses for an estate company. For a while, I worked in a flower warehouse, sorting types of flowers, and basically a massive refrigerator. So that even during the summer, I'd be on the subway and have to take a winter jacket with me. uh, in order to use it at work. Yeah, what else? Well, I also did some teaching. I taught guitar. I oh my God, what else?
Compared to the other jobs, the teaching sounds pretty good.
For sure. I still, I feel like I take that with me a little bit. When you're in the studio with a band, there's a bit of a leadership role happening there, and I think the experience of sort of teaching guitar and opening people's eyes to either musical theory or cool songs that might inspire them to want to learn them has a bit of a kinship with the act of producing music. You're, keeping everybody excited about what you're doing, and you're offering up possibilities without pushing anybody in a direction, trying to make it so that everybody in the room has their mind open to possibilities and good ideas as they come along. So yeah, definitely, I certainly didn't mind teaching. And yeah, I'm just trying to think of any other like just really. Oh, of course, we had a moving company. We when we first got our band van, we had a moving company called Hollerado, Haul, and moved people's stuff. I think for like $100, we would move entire apartments. For like 6 months. I think this was our main source of income, and we could pay for our rent. We were living in Montreal when we first got together before later moving to Toronto. We were yeah, making enough to live in Montreal, which you don't need much, and paying for our jam space, which was also like basically a condemned building, so it also didn't cost very much by just moving people. We also, we did construction. We built, we jammed in a space that was owned by like this jam space lord who just kept building jam spaces, and he hired us to build jam spaces. He hired us to, this is also not something I'm proud of, but he hired us to like steal garbage cans so that he could use them in his jam spaces. So we would, if we were in a big parking lot somewhere and we saw big trash cans we thought nobody was using, we'd throw them in the van and we'd, yeah, sell them to our jam space lord.
If
Um,
that's the worst thing you've done, you're
it's
pretty good.
it's bad. You realize that, as you get older, that everything costs money. And I mean, everything costs money, but you don't care as a kid. So you do stupid stuff like that. And we started to feel bad, so we stopped doing that.
You've done the extremes of jobs, from the hottest job being on a roof in the summer to the
That's
coldest
true.
job being in a freezer with flowers. So do
That's
do
that's true.
do those extremes of jobs make you appreciate being in the studio today, in a beautiful studio, working on music, helping other musicians live out their dreams by fleshing out their songs and recording and getting them out into the world?
Man, I super appreciate it. I really appreciate the trust people put in me with their music. I know how important my music is to me, and I know how thankful I am for the producers that worked with me to bring it all to life. So being on the other end now, a lot of the time, I really appreciate the trust people put in me, and I also appreciate the expectation they have um, that that we're going to make their make their project as good as it can be, and B, hopefully it even exceeds their expectations. So but I love that kind of challenge, and yeah, I appreciate it so much. If it ever comes to it, and I have to go back to being on a roof or being in a giant freezer, I will, but that day has not come yet.
So let's dive into Hollerado. Is it true that three-quarters of the band lived on the same street in Manotick? Is this true?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you got me and Jake in the same house, and then you have Menno 2 doors down from us.
And
Uh,
but you
it
guys
does.
didn't jam back then, did you?
We didn't right away, although Menno taught me to play guitar. I told you I turned 12 and wanted to stop playing the violin and play guitar instead. Menno played electric guitar, and to me that was clearly the thing that I had to do. That was my purpose in life, was to learn the guitar. And here was this kid. He was a couple years older than me who knew how to do it, and he could show me. And that's how I started. And the seeds were for the band were planted in that moment. You know, when he started showing me songs that he liked, I would learn them. Sometimes he would say, "Okay, bring a song that you like, and I'll show you how to play it." And I would do that. You know, blues stuff, punk stuff, rock stuff, and it turned from being lessons into a little bit more of like um, just like a musical show and tell, after a little bit of time. And we didn't start the band until I want to say 8 years after that. But from that moment, uh, playing music together was a thing.
And where did the idea of actually starting a band together come from? You guys already knew each other. You had already jammed together. Who got the idea that, hey, there might be some magic here?
Menno had a band that was wrapping up. I guess they had been playing for like 10 years. They were called the Delegates. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Delegates.
So I
Check.
actually on Twitter, somebody that became a fan of the podcast after the Jeff Burrows, the last episode with the Tea Party, he sent me a text saying, ask Nixon about the delegates. And I was like, what, the delegates? So I had to look into it and I couldn't find anything about the delegates. And I'm like, are you sure you have the information right? And he sent me a picture of the album that shows Menno in the delegates. And I was like, wow, this guy's super like did a deep dive beyond what I could find. So I
Yeah,
know of the delegates because of a fan that sent in a question. So
totally. And they had been touring. I think they made 3 records, couple great records, anyways. And they were wrapping up. Some guys were moving away, and that was winding down. I was in a band that was also wrapping up, and was in college at the time, but we started just like exploring the idea of making music together, writing songs together. And it started pretty casually, just getting together every once in a while to mess around with Pro Tools in just our kitchens or our living rooms or basements or whatever, just briefly, without really the goal of finishing anything. But I can't remember how the conversation went. There clearly was a conversation about really trying to write songs. And we were all busy with other things. I think I had a summer off of school, yeah, as did Jake. And Menno had a little time as well. I think he was working a job of some kind, uh, sort of as this band was wrapping up. But we took a couple of weeks one summer to just book everything off and hang out in a jam space in Montreal. And we came away with uh, a a bunch of songs that we loved. I don't think ever saw the light of day, but we thought they were great at the time, and that was enough to keep going and make plans to continue writing and to start thinking about playing a show down the road.
is there a story behind the band name Hollerado? It's such a unique name.
Man, honestly, we loved the name Japandroids. We thought it was so funny and a cool, what's the word, portmanteau of words. We wanted to do the same thing. And we just kept throwing ideas around. I feel like it took us a month of just throwing ideas around for names that had the same vibe as that, or had the same sort of little trick as that. And yeah, Hollerado just felt right. Our music was just kind of, I guess, boisterous, a little, a little bit fun, a little bit loud, a little bit loose. And I feel like Hollerado has the right amount of looseness going on. It's like it could be anything that's done, that involves shouting.
So is it Holler and Colorado?
Exactly.
What is there something specific about Colorado itself, or it's just the word that fit right?
It felt right. It almost sounded like a rodeo term or something. which has puts an image of something being a little unhinged in your mind. For That's why it worked for me.
So you guys between 2007 and 2008, you guys recorded 5 different demos. So these are demo in a bag. And me being in the Ottawa music scene, I at one point between 2007 and 2008, I received a actual CD in a bag from you guys. So you guys were actually handing them out that way. Can you talk about the recording of the 5 different demos in a bag, and where did the idea of actually the distribution model of physically handing them out in a clear bag with a CD that was handwritten on, where did that come from?
Yeah, I think this is a case of necessity being the mother of invention. We were just on tour and we had a few songs recorded, but we obviously didn't press any CDs, but we needed money for gas. So we decided we had to sell our songs on a CD. What's the cheapest way to do that? We would buy CD burners when CD burners were still a thing from Future Shop when Future Shop was still a thing, and burn our songs onto blank CDs. Write demo in a bag on the CD in Sharpie and put them in a Ziploc bag. Go into malls with Discmen and walk around asking people if they would listen to our music. Usually people are nice enough and they don't have enough going on in a mall that they need to get somewhere and they have a little free time. They would listen to our music, and we would size up the person and decide what song to play. I think at that time we had like Americanarama, maybe On My Own, maybe Do the Do to, and a couple other songs. And you would sort of take the stock of a person and decide whether they wanted a rock tune or a lighter tune, and play that song for them and sell hopefully the CD in a bag for $5, which hopefully cost you less than $1 to make. So, with a little investment of time, with a day off on tour, we were able to make gas money and money to stay here and there, and just enough to keep going. So it seemed honestly like such a foolproof way to do it. The Ziploc bag just protected the CD barely enough and packaged it barely enough that you could convince somebody to buy it from you just hand over fist in a mall, playing it for them on your Discman. That's where it started. That's how it stuck.
The Ziploc bag protected it enough that you could guarantee at least one listen before
Yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't
One
playable.
one listen, you could get it home and have it not scratched to the point of unplayability.
So in 2009, you guys won the Big Money Shot Battle of the Bands. The first prize was $250,000. My band was a part of the Battle of the Bands in a different year, and we won just one night and got $5,000. Like we ended up
Right.
getting equipment, and it was amazing. So we have a fan question sent in. You know this guy, Mike Lamond, known as an
Yeah.
artist as Petty Cash.
Yeah.
He has experience with you recording in your new studio, and his question is, ask him about what his expectations were going into winning the Big Money Shot versus the reality of actually winning. So it sounds like the tone of his question is maybe the winning of the $250,000 wasn't everything that you thought it would be. So I don't know if there's a story there, but you could take that however you want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, we entered that competition without any expectation of winning. We knew there was some really strong bands. One of the bands that I think was our stiffest competition was called Amos the Transparent. It was
Love
still,
that band.
yeah, it's such an amazing Ottawa band. And it was absolutely not a given, that we would be able to beat them, let alone all the other great bands that were taking part. But as the rounds kept going and things get whittled down, first from like 20 bands, then down to 10, then down to like a final 3 or 4. Um, uh, it was crazy that there became more and more of a distinct possibility that we could win. But that being said, still when they announced us as the winner, it was pretty unbelievable. It meant that we could self-release our album. Nobody was really that interested in releasing our record, to be honest. And we at that time had some connections. Though you mentioned we talked about Darren Pfeiffer at the beginning of this interview. He had a label. He was working with labels and was able to put us in touch with other labels. And yeah, not much was coming of that. We knew we were starting to be acquainted with um, sort of other people in the industry, just from playing shows, and our shows were getting good, but we didn't really have a lot of takers when it came to putting out our album. So it allowed us to distribute our record, which was the only reason that we're talking about my music career right now. It allowed us to do everything ourselves, and sort of maintain creative control too along with it, because we weren't begging for money from a label. There were you know we also didn't have sort of any creative thoughts coming from any label, so we maintained total creative control in that way. But when it came to the expectations, it's like it seems like all the money in the world, and it really is like so much. You can do so much with that, and we wouldn't have been able to do what we did without it. But at the same time, there are still bands who get and artists who get like million dollar investments to kick off the recording and marketing of their first record. And you know to a certain degree, you can only compete to a certain level, depending on what your budget is. And you realize that really fast. We made that money last. We recorded multiple albums with it. Like I said, we distributed. We bought a band van.
You
We
toured.
were able to buy like decent gear and record in better spots. But four people living off of that for like 10 years doesn't go very far. Luckily, it allowed us to invest in ourselves in a way that we're able to live off of our music. But at the same time, it's uh, I guess my expectation that it would last us forever, and it definitely didn't last us forever.
So you're talking about the record in a bag that you guys self-released in 2009. So it had the three singles, so Americanorama, Juliet, and Got to Lose. I have it up here on my wall of fame. I got the album cover here, and I remember getting it back in 2009 or 2010. And I remember listening and thinking, wow, they've done it. Like they've made a local Ottawa band has made this incredible album. And I still listen to it to today. It's such a fantastic album, start to finish. And that's why it's displayed here on the wall of fame. These are my favorite albums from guests that have been on the podcast. And I guess so. You guys made it available at the start as a free digital download. Was that you were saying because there wasn't a label in place and you knew you had a great album, you just wanted to get it out there?
I think we were so proud of it, we just wanted to share it. And the industry was changing a lot at the time. There was a pretty quick shift away from CDs being the main thing to to downloading music. At the time, streaming wasn't a thing, but downloading certainly was. And yeah, it's like we cared less about making whatever $10 for one CD, and more about making fans that we felt hopefully if they liked the record, they'd stick with us for years, which is worth way more than $10 for a CD. So that was our thinking. And it's like that was part of it. And again, we were just so proud of it that we wanted people to hear it. So we wanted to be there to be no impediments to somebody listening to it. If they wanted to download it for free, whatever you want, just take it and listen to it, and hopefully we would see them at a show.
And was Record in a Bag, was it made up of the best songs from the five different Demo in a Bag volumes, or was it new music?
It was a combination. It was definitely some of the best that we had written over the first sort of 2 years of writing songs. But there was also, yeah, there were also a few new songs. On My Own was a really early song. Americanorama was early-ish as well. Um, but stuff like Fake Drugs and Juliet were new. They were songs that we were writing within, a few months. We started writing them a few months before going into the studio and finished them in the studio. Riverside is another one that was fresh for the record. Got to Lose had its debut on Record in a Bag. Walking on the Sea, and geez, I'm forgetting I'm forgetting all the rest of the tunes right now. But like a lot of new material, but uh, we were under slightly less pressure because we felt like we already had good songs in stuff like On My Own and Americanorama and Do To, which was an older one as well, that had come out on our demos that we had released for free and those, online and on CD that we were selling in malls in Ziploc bags.
So a year after you guys released it as a free digital download in 2009, in 2010, Arts and Crafts re-released the album. How did you attract their attention?
I think well, I think they just approached us. I think we, we sort of proved ourselves by putting our record out ourselves. And, I will say as an aside, that's increasingly the model that labels take. Bands really have to prove themselves on their own before labels will take them on, for the most part, in indie music, anyways. Maybe it's a little bit of a different story in pop music. Labels still find undiscovered artists and sort of bring them along, uh, to a place where they are massive stars. But in indie music, it's still this way. You kind of have to prove yourself, and we did. Our shows were getting bigger. Our CD was doing well. We had at least one song starting to appear on the radio. And actually, Darren Pfeiffer was the first guy to play one of our songs on the radio. He played Juliet on the Edge. So thanks, Darren, for that. Man, I forgot about that. Um, but I think that attracted Arts and Crafts, and we wanted a wider distribution than we were able to do ourselves. So it was really beneficial to us to tap into their network, their distribution network. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for us. And I think, maybe it's the case that we were begging them to distribute our album and they finally relented.
So the first single, Americanorama, it had two music videos that were both great but very different. What was the reason behind having two different music videos for that one song?
We made one that with Dave Foley that we thought was great. We thought it was a funny sort of takedown of Dove Cherney, the American Apparel owner, who we thought was just a total slime ball. And we had a great time making that one, and I still love that video. But we got the opportunity to work with this up and coming director, Greg Jardin, who's done some amazing things since. But he was trying to cut his teeth, and we sort of caught him at this perfect moment where we could still afford him, but he was this up and comer who had amazing ideas. And just needed, material to pair his ideas with. I don't know how our song got pitched to him, but it did. And he ended up having just the perfect idea with this human 8-bit machine to pair with our music, to pair with Americanorama. So we went for it, and we thought, the first video was good, but this video really had a story, this up and coming director. It was visually very, very striking, and the technique behind it was fascinating. And we felt like it would just add to the discussion around our music, and it definitely did.
And that was the kind of like one take video, right? The one you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's a grid of people arranged in like a 30-foot high scaffolding, yeah, with a series of cues that they had to undergo with like massive sort of cue cards, sort of human-sized cue cards, a series of cue cards that they had to memorize for the duration, not just of the song, but it was a slowed down playback. So it was like a 10-minute, a 10-minute choreographed dance, basically, that all these people in this huge grid of scaffolding had to do, organized all in the mind of the director, of Greg Jardin, ahead of time, and drilled for the course of like a long weekend, 3 days maybe in the row of drilling and practicing, and then just one day to shoot, one day of execution to get that perfect take. And I think we did maybe 8 takes of it. And I think it was the last one or second last one that is the one in the video.
That actually doesn't sound like that many takes for
It's
how
not. It was
complicated
all
it. That's how a well-oiled machine you guys were having practice, I
it
suppose.
was all in the practice. It was practice, practice, practice. And then now we're doing it. Cameras have to be locked off, focus has to be pulled. Uh, you know, uh, Everybody has to have everything memorized down to the last detail. But it shows you how good humans are at remembering stuff if you just do it enough.
Yeah, well, you guys thought if you made this cool video with this up and coming director that maybe it could get more eyeballs on the band and on that single. And you guys were right, because I remember seeing that video because it went viral. I remember people sharing it, people talking about it, articles about it. So that's how it came to me. I was like, oh my God, Hollerado. Like they have this incredible video and it's gaining traction. So I think that paid off. Do you remember it going viral? Like it had like hundreds of thousands of views back when I first saw it.
For sure. I remember that moment. It was yeah, super exciting. Because all we were doing, to sort of, maintain maintain belief in our project was we were playing shows. Okay, good. There's, 80 people at this show, whereas there was 50 at the last one. Okay, like there was over 100 people, where we played a couple shows in a row where we sold 5 CDs at both. That's encouraging. So these little morsels to keep you going, or checking our MySpace. How many plays on our MySpace did we have? If anybody remembers that, to this just massive confirmation, along with the Battle of the Bands that we crazily won. A short time later, we got uh, kind of a hit, I guess, with this video. And that was like, okay, we can really, we've really captured people's attention. Let's keep going. Every moment of being in a band, every moment of being in a band is an existential crisis about whether or not to move forward. And a lot of the time that question is just simmering in the back of your mind, because you're just doing it. But at any given time, uh, you know, every band could potentially call into question whether to move forward. It's just a question of how far back in your heads it is at any given time.
Yeah, I feel like it was the winning of the big money shot with the virality of the music video for the first single, with then starting to hear Juliet on the radio as a hit. I feel like that 1, 2, 3 punch like really shot Hollerado into the stratosphere. Juliet is the band's most played song on Spotify, 4.8 million spins. That's just Spotify. So who knows what the numbers are adding in Tidal and Apple Music and YouTube. Why do you think people love that song, Juliet, so much? That's, I love a ton of different Hollerado songs. I'm familiar with the whole discography. That might be my favorite song. So I know why I love it. Why do you think other people love that song so much?
That's a great question. I don't know. I know that I love it, so it makes sense to me that other people like it. I love the musicality of it. I think the lyric is good. You know, I think when a lyric is good and a concept is good, whether or not people are paying attention to the lyrics, um, it still has an effect. Whether or not it's obvious to people what a song is about, I think you can tell when a band or an artist believes in what they're singing about, and when they have just a really great message, and that translates. I think that's infectious. That belief in what you're talking about is infectious, whether or not you get the message. And that song is about, someone who's basically on their deathbed, but having a healthy perspective on life and appreciating the life that she's lived. And I think a lot of people have no clue that that's what it's about, but maybe that seeps in somewhere, and gives that song a longevity.
So after the release of that album, you guys get nominated for your first Juno. So this is for Best New Group. What does that first Juno nomination mean to you guys? I mean, you independently recorded and released this album, and it goes on to get nominated for, you guys as a Best New Group. That to me, that seems like such an honor versus, a band that a major label put all this money behind it. There's this big machine in motion. It's like you guys kind of willed that into existence.
It was, I think, super meaningful. Stuff like that is so not, the mark of a successful song, record, act, whatever. But we were trying to some degree, come up with songs that had a universal message, and to be recognized, you know, um, from a group, like I think the Junos are, that um, has on their radar sort of stuff that is universal, stuff that is poppy and mainstream. It is what we were trying to do, and I think we were, I think it showed us that we were kind of on track with what we were trying to do. And as much as whatever, like, having that video be compelling for people like we were just talking about, and having stuff start to play on the radio, being a part of the conversation, is what we were trying to do, and the Junos helped that for sure. So yeah, that was great. Some of my best memories of that, were just of like seeing other artists, and how they did things. I remember Neil Young performed at that Juno ceremony. I thought that was amazing. It was inspiring. Um, I know that I saw Daniel Lanois there, being involved in the Neil Young project at that time as well, and that was incredibly inspiring. Really lights a fire under you to feel uh, that what you're doing can be said anywhere close to being in the same conversation as people like that. It was a really inspiring moment.
So around that time, you guys ended up on a 2-week tour of China. What comes to mind when you think of your time in China?
Uh, Pretty amazing time. The shows were, some of the most intense shows that we've ever played. I think it was a lot of people's, first time seeing a rock show, and the effect that it had on a lot of those crowds was pretty intense, to the point where, after the show they would almost be in tears, wanting to talk to us about what a great time they had. And really, yeah, really was a testament to, um, how badly we need these things, how important music is, how important community is. Um, uh, and yeah, and those are shows that I'll remember pretty much forever. The traveling was amazing too. We had done some traveling as a group, but as far as bonding exercises go, you know,
It's a long flight.
yeah, locking yourself into that kind of commitment, with four people, is pretty amazing. No matter how well you already think you know each other, um, getting sort of parachuted into a country where nobody speaks your language and you can't even sort of read the signage, really, yeah, forces you to band together and just, yeah, weather whatever weird unknown is coming your way.
The survival instinct starts to kick in there.
For sure, yeah, this sort of, banding together instinct was pretty strong during that time.
So we have a fan question from Jennifer Toy, and her question is, if you never picked up a guitar, what would you have been doing instead? And then what is your favorite Hollerado song to play?
Cool. What do I want to answer first? If I never picked up a guitar, I mean, don't know how likely that is in the grand scheme of things, in the scheme of the multiple alternate
The
realities
multiverse.
that exists out there. But maybe there's one where that happened. I probably would have. I think I mentioned briefly I got into engineering. I was into planes. I think I probably would have got into engineering of some kind. Uh, maybe I would have liked to work on planes. Uh, Maybe I would be contributing, hopefully doing something good for the world, contributing to, green technologies, which sort of became a late interest of mine in studying engineering that I never got to follow through on because I went on tour and made records instead. But yeah, let's say doing something along those lines. Favorite Hollerado song to play. Um, I know. I'm trying to think of what the easiest Hollerado song to play, and that would probably be my favorite because you get to just to sit back and enjoy as opposed to, fight for every inch of how good it sounds or how bad it doesn't sound. Um,
When you were playing a Hollerado concert and you would look down at your set list on the
right.
stage, was there ever a song that you would get to and you'd always get excited to play that song for whatever reason?
Yeah, totally. I mean, everybody loves playing crowd pleasers. I love playing Juliet for that reason. One of the later ones I love to play was Born Yesterday. Those are pretty high energy and a lot of fun. I feel like one that always connected was Got to Lose, and I feel like that just sat so comfortably in our wheelhouse, in our range. There wasn't anything sort of too athletic about it. Where in Juliet, I got to hit a real high note uh, uh, when I sing the chorus. Born Yesterday is really fast, and there's a lot of pretty high notes in the singing as well. But for Got to Lose, it's so breezy, and you kind of can't mess it up. That definitely became a favorite of mine. It was sort of like a breather in the set, but still, it wasn't a breather in terms of it being a bathroom break song. uh it wasn't one that people sort of snooze through, at least from my perspective. It was a nice sort of had a sing-along quality to it, which always felt like it made like a real nice connection with the audience every time, and I liked it for that reason.
So in 2011, you guys released the album Margaritaville 2, The Reckoning. The first single, Good Day at the Races, it became a top 10 hit in Canada. The music video gets nominated for Video of the Year at the Junos. The video features you guys riding and racing on ostriches. What was that experience like for the rest of the world that has no idea what that's like?
uh yeah, that's another sort of uh you know what's coming moment where we were like, what's coming next and what weird thing are we going to get to do together? And that was it. It was awesome. I feel like there was a long stretch where we sort of didn't question things, and whatever bizarre next step we had to take, we would just take it, and that was in the thick of all that for sure. um that was so fun. I think that was the furthest we ever traveled up to that point to make a music video. That was shot in Wichita, Kansas, which is how far you have to go if you want to ride an ostrich. Um, and I had a blast. I'd never ridden anything, I'd never ridden a horse up to that point.
Might
Uh,
as well start with an ostrich.
might as well start with an ostrich. A little scary because they're, so dumb. They're liable just to run themselves into the wall and you with them. And they have no sense of danger whatsoever. And these massive claws that if you fell off and got stepped on them, and got stepped on by their claws, it would probably hurt, might really hurt. So, a little bit of a sense of danger, a little bit of a sense of competition, because even though you're not really racing to win, you're just kind of racing to stay on, like a bit of a rodeo. We were all a little bit competitive with each other, so it was kind of fun to see who would stay on the longest. And I think I did pretty okay. So it was fun in that way, but also just another moment where we're doing this thing together, and nobody else, who else in the world is riding ostriches? uh you know I'm sure somebody, but it felt like nobody. So that we had this experience that only we could relate to one another. when it came to that experience, which is, again, a great, uh, teamwork building exercise.
And no band members were injured in the making of that music video?
Not seriously injured. A few of us fell off, but just merely a scratch, as they say,
Just a few flesh wounds.
just a flesh wound.
That's awesome. When I want to dive a little bit more into the music videos. When I think of Hollerado, what comes to mind is a fun band. So at concerts, it's just a party atmosphere, a fun atmosphere. There's the confetti, there's the songs that are fun and you can get into. So three things come to mind with Hollerado. So there's the fun concerts, there's your lead guitar riff to me is a big part of the sound of Hollerado. Just the clean sound, the catchy riffs. You somehow you come up with all these different catchy riffs through the entire discography. To me, that's a huge part of, when I hear Hollerado on the radio, I can pinpoint who the band is because of your actual guitar sound and your guitar riffs. And the last thing is I think of music videos. You guys did a great job of coming up with unique and memorable music videos and using the medium of the music video to really um, present the image of the band to the world. How early on did you guys know that music videos would be a very important medium of promotion for the band? You guys were consistent across your entire career of having a certain touch to the music videos for Hollerado.
Yeah, I think the second video we shot was for Juliet. Was that our after um after the first Americanarama after the first Americanarama video? And um I think it was a meaningful one. I think like we knew, Juliet had legs as a song at that point. And um eh, we knew we had to like add a little fuel to the marketing fire for that tune. And the music video definitely felt important. We felt like it perfectly captured the idea of the song, and we knew that that was something that we wanted to continue doing. Um, plus we had a great time making them. We always enjoyed making videos. Not just for making the videos, but because we believed in the music and we wanted to we wanted to expose our music to as many people as possible, and that definitely felt like the way to go at the time. I don't know, I don't know how many people still watch music videos. I do from time to time, when there's a song I really love, and an artist who I'm curious to see how they've decided to represent their music visually. Uh, but how much music is being discovered through videos, through viral videos these days, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's the same.
You're saying it
Uh,
was different back when we were growing up and it was the Much Music and the MTV that just 24/7 was playing music
Man, it
videos.
was definitely different when we were growing up. And I think we still had a bit of that mentality, whatever it was 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, where, a music video, if it sort of got in rotation, maybe not on Much Music, but on YouTube, and was something that could spread, both by word of mouth and by that time through social media, that you could discover artists through music videos, and because of that reason, it was really important that the visual statement that you made dovetailed with the musical statement that you were making. Um, so it was really important to us that, yeah, they had that look, they had this like joie de vivre that I think a lot of our music tried to tap into. And yeah, and that it was just, yeah, like a representation of how we wanted people to feel when they A, listened to us, or B, came to a show. So in that music video for Juliet, there is, there's a continuous cutting to a scene of people kind of just partying around us, and that was reflected in the fact that we always invited people on stage to just sort of rock out at the end of all of our shows. um that very thing that we did at our shows, we wanted to represent consciously in our music videos. So yeah, we went to some lengths anyways uh, to make our videos feel like our shows did.
So in 2013, you guys released the album White Paint. There's three singles: Pick Me Up, So It Goes, and Desire 126. Were you guys feeling massive pressure following up the success of Record in a Bag?
We I think we just put pressure on ourselves. We loved our first record. We had so much fun playing it. We had a ton of fun writing it and recording it. Uh, Record two, I think was like a little less fun to record. There was a little more head scratching. Is this as good as record one? Or is this capturing the same thing? Or, other thoughts of, is this evolving at all from our first record? And I think there was a conscious decision to like try to evolve as much as we could while not becoming a completely different band because we liked the band that we were. I think when people sort of just make music and don't think too much about it, they can't help but be themselves. But when you do start to think about it, you run the risk of sort of masking who you are. And I think we encountered that a little bit. We ran that risk a little bit of sort of thinking to the point where we might want to introduce sort of trappings to the music, extra sounds, extra backup vocals, extra synthesizers, extra percussion. We can do all this stuff that we didn't do on record one. Let's think about what we want to do. I think we maybe came close uh, to masking who we were on that record, but I don't think we fully did in a good way. I think it was still us, and we managed to maintain sort of a distillation of who we were on that record. Um, but it was more of a battle. I think everybody's second record is more of a battle than their first record, because you do have a first record to reflect on, and maybe that is in the back of your head. It can be a great thing to be coming from somewhere and to evolve and to have ideas of where you want to go, of where you're coming from. That is great, but it also gives you something to reflect on, which isn't necessarily the best, you know?
Yeah, they say it's you have your entire life to write the first album, right? You had from 12 where you start songwriting up until say your early 20s to do Record in a Bag, and then you have maybe a year or two before you have to do the follow-up. So uh it's not equal there, for the amount of time you have.
Totally. And I think we were in the situation at that point that a lot of other artists are in after their first record, where you're touring a lot more, you're kind of more tired. You don't, while you're touring, necessarily always feel like trying to generate new ideas, but that record two has got to happen soon. So you try to force yourself. And as soon as you start trying to force things, again, you maybe get away from sort of what you might do naturally and more towards just a bit of artifice to like just to have an idea, just to have an idea there for something that could go on record two. Record two took a lot of time. Record three also took a lot of time. But for some reason, yeah, record two felt like more of a battle to try and both be ourselves but to evolve to some degree.
The second single, So It Goes, the song and the music video got a lot of attention because of the story with Menno's grandfather. For our listeners that maybe haven't heard that song or haven't seen that music video, can you just share that story briefly?
For sure. Yeah, the song is about how Menno's granddad was a resistance fighter for the Dutch during World War II, and the crazy story that goes along with that. Um, you know, it I think is an amazing song. I think it's you know probably one of the most meaningful songs we've ever written, and uh, I think is one of the tunes on that second record that is just like super authentically us because it is such an authentic story. He was a resistance fighter, and survived the war, uh, but before the war finished was a prisoner in a Nazi prison. and was going to be put to death by the guy who ran that prison, but whose life was spared, and in return spared the life of that guy who ran the prison after the war when he was put on trial, and said, no, this guy is a good guy. He spared, he spared my life. He you know had compassion, and he's not a killer. um and that's all written there in the song, which yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great story songs out there, and I think that's one of them.
And the music video is the the guy who the story is about. It's his grandson Menno, and then the prison guard that was also spared. Like they saved each other's lives, and then there's
Yeah.
his grandson that Menno meets. So it's like the different generations that wouldn't be here if not for the two grandpas saving each other. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It was really crazy. We had this idea, like, what if we could track him down? And it took a little while, but yeah, the fact that it was actually possible and actually happened continues to blow my mind.
The cover art for White Paint. There's a unique story about how you guys came up with that. And it goes on to get nominated for a Juno for Recording Package of the Year. So that's the band's third Juno nomination. Can you share the story behind? I remember seeing a video of the making of the cover of this album.
Yeah, for sure. So the record cover itself, before we get to the white paint portion, is a photograph of a stained glass that Menno's grandfather made later in his life. And it is a real, like, stained glass window in a real church in Toronto, and it's still there. So it's a photo of that. And then the white paint portion is literal white house paint covering up that stained glass. And, the idea being, he's gone, but he's still there, under the layers, you know, that exist after his time. And the white paint peels off, and the stained glass is under there, and is, revealed to whatever degree you want to scratch that paint off. And I think that's a great analogy for all of our past, and all of, the people that we've had in our lives that may not be around anymore. You can always delve back into the time where they were around, and they're always there under the surface, right? So to apply the paint portion of this cover, we threw a massive party in a warehouse and invited basically all of our friends to come join us. And the only rule is just paint some record covers while you're there. We had 10,000 to get through. And so we invited as many people as we could. It was an absolute blast. We stayed up all night painting record covers. And then in the sober light of day, we realized that we only painted about a couple thousand. With everybody partying so much, we kind of forgot to do the main job. So we had to go back to that warehouse for about another week, with the only aim of finishing covering all the records that hadn't been painted. And it was painful because we were in pretty rough shape for a few days following that party. But yeah, we did it. And that's how the records went out to stores, covered in white paint.
So we have a fan question from Brittany Dakin. Her question is, what was your favorite place to perform at?
Okay, cool. That's funny. I know Brittany too. Hey, Brittany. She's an old friend as
I
well.
I infiltrated your whole friend
Yeah,
group, your whole fan base for
totally.
Hollerado. Yeah.
It's so nice of my friends and family to care, and to care about having some answers to these questions. Uh, we played so many cool places over the years. Sounds like this implies a place that I played multiple times. You know what? So I'm gonna go with something a place that we played, um, multiple times. But even then, there's a lot. Um, there's a few really meaningful places. We played one place that we played a lot over the years is the Horseshoe in Toronto. I love playing there and going back there. Um, because it's where, you know, we played our first out of town show as a band ever was there. You know, our first experience of being on tour was there. So I love that place a lot. Um, but I like playing in other places across Canada as well. You know, in Ottawa, it's called the 27 Club now, but we used to play Zaphods a lot. As far as rock clubs goes, that's like just a great classic, you know, indie rock bar, which I really love, you know, for that reason. Um, but yeah, like, you know, we played obviously some bigger stages at times too, and I always loved playing Blues Fest anytime we played Ottawa Blues Fest. I think that is just such a classic festival, and now kind of stands as one of the biggest festivals in Canada that still exists, because many festivals have sort of come and gone over the years. I think COVID killed a few, but that one still persists, and I think it's been amazing year after year. And I so love what it does. You know, not just for Ottawa, but for music in Canada. I think that is such a great institution. So I've always loved playing there. You know, I can think of other places. For some reason, shows in Edmonton are always crazy. People uh, I think party really hard in Edmonton.
Anything that gets them out of the cold winters and
I
into
think
a
so. Yeah,
concert.
I think so. So there's a place called the Starlight Club in Edmonton. I love playing. It's an old movie theater, so the floor like slopes downwards towards the stage, which is a really fun quirk about that place. I love play anytime any chance we got to go to Newfoundland. I always loved because it's so different and it's so its own thing. You know, I always loved playing in Montreal. We played you know, so many fun places there. You know, so when I say when someone says what where do you love to perform the most, I would say just about everywhere in Canada has an amazing place or two that I love going back to. I love playing over the years, and you know, I continue to go back to a little bit, touring with Anyway Gang now.
So I was in the GTA for 11 years. I moved back to Ottawa 2 years ago. So for the last 2 years, I've gone to Blues Fest for the entire, I get the full festival pass. So I'm there for, 12 to 14 days each summer, and it's been amazing. So
It is
I feel you on the Blues Fest being so great. In 2015, you guys released the album 111 Songs. Can you share with our listeners what project led you guys to having to write such a ridiculous amount of songs?
for sure. With the release of our second album, we offered for those who wanted to get an extra special experience along with the pre-order of their album, we offered to write a custom song. And I think we charged like $5 extra to write a custom song for anybody who wanted one, which in retrospect was crazy because we got like you said 111 requests for custom songs before we cut it off, and because we would have got more if we hadn't stopped accepting requests at that point.
We regret this decision immediately.
We regretted it rather quickly, and it didn't take long to get those 111. So we were committed though to writing 111 songs. We spent literally 2 years in the studio writing and recording all of these 111 songs because for some reason we couldn't bring ourselves just to like whip off silly little songs. Although in some cases we did, for the most part, you know, we thought about who this person was and they gave us a couple of details about themselves to go off of to figure out a song direction. And we would pour over these details and try to come up with something that was a real song as good as we possibly could. And it took us such a long time, but we came up in the process with some songs that wound up on record 3. So it was a fun project in and of itself. And I mean, I think we became better songwriters as a result because of how many songs we had to write. And that was sort of the beginning of me figuring out how to produce music too, because there was so much music to make that we all had to sort of take on production roles. and there was no choice but to figure it out. And so so that was, I credit that project with getting me into production.
And you guys released one of the songs as a single, which was called Firefly. It became a top three hit in Canada. And I could be wrong, but that's the song that it was written for Annie Murphy, the award-winning actress from Schitt's Creek, who's married to Hollerado singer Menno. How does I don't know, how does that end up being out of 111 songs? So just Menno put a little something extra into that song for her, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we did. So during that time, those guys' apartment burned down, and
Oh man.
what that song is about. So we all put something totally extra into that. And because that was a personal story, it sort of became close to our hearts, and one that we, yes, did for this project, but that we also, we went and re-recorded with our producer Gus Van Gogh, uh, who to really give it the Hollerado treatment. And yeah, that's what that song is about. Along with all of the other songs that we were writing, with details about other fans for the 111 songs. That one was super special because this happened to them. This actually happened to them while we were doing this project, and we couldn't help but write about it.
How amazing is it the amount of success that Annie's gone on to have? I mean, winning an Emmy, nominated for a Golden Globe. I love Black Mirror. I just watched the new season, and she's the star of one of the episodes with Selma Hayek. You knew her long before the crazy acting career. What has it meant to you to see her go on? You guys as a band go on to have all this success, and her as an actress goes on to have that success.
Man, it's pretty cool. She and I have been friends since we were about 15, so way before the band was even a glimmer on the horizon. And just as buddies, at one point, we told each other, she said, "I want to be an actor," and I was like, "Oh, cool, I want to be a musician." And at the time, you don't maybe necessarily believe uh, that you will achieve those things. So it's pretty cool. For me, I love the role that I've been able to play in the music industry, but I think it's been especially cool to see, the recognition she's been able to get and the amazing things she's been able to do as an actor.
So in 2017, you guys released the album Born Yesterday. There's three more singles: Born Yesterday, I Got You, Eloise. It's so hard for a band to sound unique with the amount of music that's created globally. Hollerado from the very start had a very unique sound. How important was that to the band to cultivate that uniqueness?
Um, Really important, not because we necessarily wanted to distinguish ourselves from other bands, but we just wanted to like what we were making. So yeah, the end goal wasn't to be distinct. The end goal was to feel authentic. Uh, and we just had, an instant sort of reaction against anything that just didn't feel right. Um, and we don't have to, I won't do this, but there are songs on our records that I could point to that I think feel a little less like us than others. And I think every band has that, because you're striving for something, or some people strive for something that only you could have written. Uh, and I think if you pull that off, then you're never going to get sick of playing those songs. You're never going to get sick of talking about those songs. And your repertoire is going to serve you for a long time. And I think, with the record you just brought up, the Born Yesterday record, I think we had kind of figured out what it was that we were good at and what made us feel like ourselves. And we were able to, we were able to sort of hone it to, I think, like a finer point on that record than we did certainly on record two. That, as much as I love record two, White Paint, I feel like it was like striving for something and experimenting, and was sort of a stepping stone towards record three when I think those experiments sort of congealed or coalesced.
So we have a fan question sent in. This is from Sean Siddons, who's the guy on Twitter that knew about the Delegates, and he said that he has the Delegates albums, and he said that one day he heard this Hollerado band on the radio, and he recognized the voice immediately from the Delegates. So he's the guy that knows all this music history that I wasn't aware of. So Sean's question is: I know that Hollerado toured the UK in 2017 with Sum 41. Would love to know if he has any good stories about that tour.
um, that was an amazing tour. That was a really interesting tour, because Derek Whibley, I mean, famously, this isn't top secret or anything, but he, suffered, suffered from alcoholism for a while before that tour, but then got managed to completely kick it, sort of completely cut it out. And we were on two tours. We were on one with them before he went through that transformation, in Canada and the US. And then we were on that one, which took place shortly afterwards, that he just totally decided to cut everything out. And he was so amazing. He was such a master of the stage, killed every single show, playing to 5 to 10,000 people a night. I've seen a lot of bands perform, but as far as frontmen go, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who matches up to him, I think. So first of all, it was amazing in that way. Um, keeping up with those guys is a task when you're in a van and they're in a tour bus, and it's like a really a really breakneck pace is tough, but they still like take the time to like be incredibly sweet. I think it was my birthday on the tour, and they took the time to not only get me a cake, but they got me a pair of socks that was like the local UK soccer team, wherever we were. I don't think it was Manchester, but that's like the only soccer team I know. So that's what comes to mind. Uh, which was such a sweet gesture. And they always found a way to make such an intense tour have a sense of of comfort and the feeling of being sort of at home with family, which was amazing.
And when you mentioned that it was hard to keep up with them, they're a band with a tour bus with a hired driver, and they could sleep at night while the driver is driving to the next city, and then you guys are four band members driving your own van. So while they're getting sleep, you guys are actually up driving through the night. Is that what was so hard to keep up?
Basically, and a lot of opening bands wind up in that position, uh, where you're huffing and puffing to make it to sound check, whereas they're waking up in the next town after having slept on the bus overnight. You're doing exactly as you said. You're driving overnight. There's something really fun about it, and when you're in the moment, it's like a sport. And your adrenaline is pumping and it keeps you going. But at the end of a tour like that, you need to sleep for about 2 weeks.
So in 2019, you guys released the album Retaliation Vacation. You guys actually knew in advance before releasing the album that this would be your last album and that you guys were going to tour behind it as well. That would be your final tour.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, it's strange. I guess normally it's like, a band is feuding and they just break up in the moment. It's not planned in advance. So it just after so many years of being a band and hustling 24/7, it just felt amongst all the band members, okay, maybe it's time to go on some other adventures outside of Hollerado.
Yeah, I think so. Like we we loved the band that we became. We loved um I think the initial idea for our band like so much, and we got to a point where we felt like we didn't totally want to do the same thing, but we also didn't really want to evolve. Like Colorado to us just you know, like it, you know, like was a, you know, as much a, you know, was a philosophy that we didn't want to like, you know, suddenly break apart and rebuild from the ashes. We wanted it just to exist as we initially saw it. And we were basically teenagers when we started the band, you know, or in our really early 20s. And we got to this point where we're like, you know, in our mid to late 30s, and where we had to ask the question, okay, like, do we want to keep making records like this, you know, with like the sort of fun band mentality that you talked about? Do we want to just keep making fun band records? Do we want to evolve? Do we want to try and become something different? If so, what should that something different be? And if we don't want to do either of those things, does it make sense, just to take a, you know, just to like basically retire the band, uh, um, you know, for now, let's say, you know, who knows what the future might hold, but it definitely felt like the right decision at that time, um, to, you know, everybody wants to evolve. You don't want to just get stuck in a loop and live it for your entire life. And it felt like we were in danger of doing that if we just kept making Hollerado records. Retaliation Vacation was fun to make because we put zero expectations on ourselves, and you know, because we knew it was our last record, you know, we didn't feel like we needed to match up to any other thing, so it allowed us to like experiment a little bit with evolving in some directions without worrying about whether we were reinventing the wheel, or like, you know, how are we going to brand this record if it's not a normal Hollerado record. um how are we going to market it? How are we going to market it? What is the feeling going to be? We didn't have to care about any of that stuff. We could just make fun music and hang out in the studio together for a few months, you know, one last time, uh which I'm so glad we did it that way. You know, it's allowed each of us to evolve individually. You know, Menno with solo stuff and working on the record label Royal Mountain, me with production, and also, as you said, rumors of a solo record, you know, which I'm working on now. And then, you know, Jake and Dean doing their own thing. Jake is teaching. Dean is working with Collective Arts as an event manager, so putting on shows. You know, and doing his own thing as well. It's allowed us to do that. And if we do make more Hollerado music in the future, I think it's going to benefit greatly, from us each going in our own directions at this point.
And making that collective decision in advance allowed that album and that final tour to be more of a celebration than like mourning the death of something.
Absolutely, we had nothing but the best time with it.
So we have a fan question from Aubrey Kirkpatrick. Her question is, can you think of any memorable fan encounters?
That's cool. Aubrey's also a really old friend. What's up, Aubrey?
What's up?
What's up? She lives in New Zealand now, which is crazy. Um, any memorable fan encounters? Um, geez, let me think. There's so many. We were talking about Blues Fest a little bit ago. We had some kids who were fans of ours join us one Blues Fest to sing a tune, to sing Twist and Shout on stage. And I think, you know, our minds were blown because they were so good. They played and sang, we played and sang, and sort of backed them up, while they did their thing, and we've remained friends with them ever since. So, you know, from it's so cool how we sort of went from them being fans and just sort of like wanting to say hi after a show to them performing with us on a big stage in front of thousands of people, and then like maintaining that relationship afterwards. I mean, that's one of so many. But I feel like, yeah, we've like we weirdly like became friends with, you know, our fans, and a lot of them we still talk to and keep in touch with. It's cool.
We have another fan question. I want to make sure I get through all of them. You know, they took the time to send in a question, so give them all a shout out. So this is from John Terpstra. John's question is Hollerado. Well, he has a statement first. Hollerado is one of my favorite bands. I saw them over a dozen times, 4 times during the final tour. Great band as well as a great group of guys. Always friendly with fans and thankful that we attend their shows. His questions are: what is his favorite song to cover? And if he could play in any other band, what would it be?
Oh man. Okay. Favorite song to cover. Yeah, we played Damn It by Blink 182 a lot.
Nice.
That comes to mind as just a fun one. That's the last song we played on stage together. Um, so it holds a special place in my heart. Geez, if I could be in any other band, um, yeah, I mean, there's so many that I feel
The
would be.
Beatles.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah, it's
If
hard
we're
to
really
answer
going,
that question.
if we're really going there, yeah, I would have loved to, be in a rock band in the '60s. Not even necessarily a successful rock band, but we all have this, romantic view of what making music in the '60s must have been like. I would have loved to have experienced that on some level. I think it would have been pretty cool.
So we have some kind words sent in from the one and only Jake Boyd, aka your brother, aka drummer for Hollerado. Here's what Jake has to say. I love Nick. He is the absolute best and only brother I've ever had. Being in a band, multiple bands actually, with him has been one of the greatest pleasures of my life. On top of his excellent guitar playing, singing, and music production, he's one of the most thoughtful, prolific, and hardworking songwriters you're ever likely to meet. His musical abilities are only matched by how great of a guy Nick is. You would be hard pressed to find anyone within the Canadian music industry who has anything short of love for him. Also, please ask him to talk about his still unreleased solo material because a lot of it is absolutely fantastic. So that's from Jake.
Oh, that's great. Never hurts to have some words to pump you up on a daily basis. I get that from Jake a lot. I really appreciate that.
And you mentioned, and then he mentioned this yet to be released solo album. So, as we wrap up the interview, can you share anything for the fans? What the style of music will be? Is it just a few singles, an EP, a full length? Is there any time frame? Not to put too much pressure on you, but just as a
Oh,
fan, we want to know. You know.
yeah. Hey, yeah. I'll take every opportunity to talk about it, and start plugging it. Um, it's softer stuff, singer-songwriter stuff, but still kind of with some electric guitars, and some drums. I have a lot of influences, but from sort of softer, sort of '60s, sort of like folk pop stuff, to sort of more recent stuff, Elliott Smith, Andy Schoaf, and yeah, and stuff like that. So I'm super excited. I was getting pretty close to finishing it, but then a couple weeks ago, my car got broken into, and I had a few hard drives stolen, one of which had my entire solo record on it. So I'm just about to start from scratch recording it.
Oh man, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where you kind of can't believe your eyes, and the situation was so bad that I had to just kind of stand there and laugh.
Yeah, man, that's tough. I have two final questions. Can you handle two more questions here?
For sure, I can. My little boy's starting to wake up, but I think we got time.
All right, we'll blast through these final two. When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of, and what are you most grateful for?
Man, I think I'm most proud of maintaining a good attitude through my years in the music industry. I think there are a lot of opportunities to get downtrodden, and either get bitter or disheartened, or jealous, or hard on yourself, or sort of lose perspective, whether that means through success or through the lack of success. But um, I still love it. I love so much working with other artists. I love working on their songs. I love working on my songs. I love playing on stage, and I love all the personalities that I get to meet doing this work. So I'm just really proud of hopefully maintaining, an attitude where I'm still excited to show up to work every day. And then what was the second one?
What are you grateful for looking back
Oh,
on
well,
the
I'm
career?
grateful for the people that I work with. I'm grateful for my entire band. I'm grateful for my wife and everybody who has supported me, that have allowed me to do this, whether by um, making space and time for the things that I needed to do my work, or encouraging me through the words or from being at the show. Um, yeah, really, really grateful for everyone around me, either in the music industry or out of it, that has been supportive.
So normally my final question is if you could go back in time and whisper words of advice to your 10-year-old self, what would
Mhm.
that advice be? But in your case, you have this young son. So let's use your son in this example.
Sure.
If you could take all your lifetime of experience, of lessons, of mentorships, of ups and downs, if you could take all the lessons you've learned in your life so far, and you could whisper words of advice to your cute little son there to help guide him through this human experience, what words of advice do you provide?
Yeah, I love that. I think a big part of it has to do with just spending time with people who make you happy. Um, that to me has led to a lot of what I've done. Feeling like you're in the right place with the right people, no matter what you're doing, is kind of everything. Uh, so that would be a big part of it. And I've been lucky that that my journey has led to me to the people who I absolutely believe I was meant to know in my life.
So, as we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a guitarist, as a singer songwriter, as an audio engineer, as a producer. I want to acknowledge you for being a great ambassador for Manotick, for Ottawa, showing, the young musicians in this area that it is possible to have a big dream and to pursue a career in music. It can work out. You can achieve success. You've shown to us that that is possible. I want to thank you for all the great music you've put out with Hollerado over the years. I mentioned the debut album here has been in rotation for me since its release, so thank you for that. I want to acknowledge you for opening up your own recording studio, which is giving back. It's helping other musicians to have a safe space, an encouraging space to pursue their music, and it gives them a final product that when you help them go from having nothing to having something, having their dream in their hands that they can then share with the world. So you're making dreams come true with the studio work, and I appreciate that. And then last but not least, I want to thank you for sitting down with me for the last 2 hours for this interview. I've been a fan of yours, a fan of your band, a fan of the music since the very beginning, from the same music scene. So I really appreciate your time, Nixon. Thank you so much.
Been my absolute pleasure, Joel. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, congrats on this great podcast. And that was a great interview, man. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So to the Nixon fans, to the Hollerado fans, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is, who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.